Welcome back, fearfully and wonderfully made human, to another episode of the Holistic Counselor Podcast. I'm Diana from Through the Valley Therapy and Transformed Mind Consulting and Coaching. Before we dive in, I want to take a moment to remind everyone listening that transformation begins with accountability. It takes courage to confront our struggles, reflect deeply, and invite the light of truth into the places we often avoid. True healing happens when we stop hiding, acknowledge where we are, and ask for the strength to grow. My hope is that each episode inspires you to look within, lean into hope, and take one step closer to becoming the person that our Creator has created you to be. Today, I'm sitting down with an amazing colleague I met through the Christian Mental Health Professionals group. Jaquesta Michelle is a licensed clinical social worker based in South Florida and the owner of a private practice where she serves women navigating challenges like depression, anxiety, grief, and relationship issues. After experiencing the NICU journey with her own child, Jaquesta felt called to work with mothers who've been through similar hardships. She specializes in supporting the perinatal community, addressing birth trauma, perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, and pregnancy loss. Jaquesta holds a maternal mental health certificate from Postpartum Support International and is listed on their provider registry. She's also a certified clinical trauma professional. But what stands out most about her is her authenticity and passion for empowering women to speak their truth and live boldly. I'm honored to share this conversation with someone who is creating ripples of change in such an important space. Thank you for being here with me, Jaquesta.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, like I usually start, I'm always curious about the background, right? So, can you start sharing a bit about your journey to becoming a certified clinical trauma professional and your work supporting mothers through birth trauma and motherhood transitions?
Okay. So my journey has been long. I started out working with individuals in homelessness. And then after getting my master's, I started working with families, those who've had contact with DCF or were at risk of losing their children. I was a nurturing parent facilitator.
And
And
where is that? Where were you? Like what do you like what
what
area?
location?
Yeah, like
I was in Broward
oh,
at the
okay.
time. I
Oh,
was in
okay.
Broward. And then I started working as a therapist, also with families and individuals. And throughout the course of just my career, I recognized that a lot of the behaviors or the reasons why families came into what we call the system
Yeah,
is because of trauma.
right.
And even those I encountered, because I also worked with veterans. Like I said, I worked in homelessness, domestic violence, and a lot of it is trauma. And also, after experiencing my own trauma
Mm,
and childhood trauma and recognizing that that's what it was, I wanted to learn and I wanted to educate my community about trauma and how it
yeah.
affects us.
Wow.
Um,
Did you grow
Go
up
ahead.
here in Broward?
Yes, I did. I did.
Which school did you go to?
I went to Deerfield Beach High School.
What? So did I.
Really? My whole family like went to Deerfield Beach High
Oh
School.
my goodness. I might know your family member. Let me
Yes.
see. No, well, should I ask you when you graduated? When did you graduate high school?
2003.
Oh my goodness, I grew up with your parents. Did they go to Deerfield High?
Yes, my mom did.
When did she
Most of my
graduate?
uncles.
When?
My mom did not graduate. She was actually
Okay.
a teen mom.
Oh, wow.
But she was there in the 80s.
Oh my goodness, I might know her.
You might know my uncles too. My uncles were star athletes.
What's their names? Oh man,
Basketball and football. My uncle Brown was, or he was actually All American.
he must have been maybe early 80s because I'm late 80s.
Late 80s, I think maybe 88.
Wait, then I should know him. But okay, but that's
Okay.
but the thing is, all right, I get it. Well, then I totally understand where you're coming from and what you're talking about because I went to Crystal Lake. What did you go to Deerfield Middle or Crystal Lake?
I went to Crystal Lake for sixth grade, and then I went to Deerfield Middle.
Oh wow. Okay,
Yep.
yeah. So I went to Crystal
That's
Lake.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm like,
Bug pride.
yes, Buck Pride for anyone listening. That we're yeah. Well, okay, sorry. So I just got all excited now. It's like a fellow Buck. Yay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, so you were now I understand more because if you were working with homeless you know, and DCF, yeah, in Broward, that's pretty, intense because I did too. And we see
Hmm.
things like yeah, it's yeah. Vicarious trauma is a real thing. Like we could pick that
Oh
stuff
yeah.
up too. And growing up, I mean, like you just shared, you grew up in a place understanding. And the thing is, what's beautiful that I hear is that you actually like educated yourself and you realize like, hey, I'm going to do something about it. Now you're going back to help. I bet the community. And I tried, I mean, this is why I created this podcast and my blog and everything I try to do to bring, healing back to Deerfield Beach.
Yes, I
So,
love that.
so tell me about your story with the why birth trauma and motherhood.
Okay, so in 2023, I
Mm.
had my son, and he, okay, so my son was born 27 weeks early. I mean, he
Wow.
was born at 27 weeks, so he was 3 months early.
Hmm.
And I had had like a normal pregnancy, and my pregnancy journey was, when I say normal, I mean,
Hmm.
it was a smooth pregnancy. There weren't any complications.
Okay.
And it wasn't until I think around towards the end of my second trimester, we started to notice that my blood pressure was elevated. And I ended up in the hospital.
Mm.
I hadn't had any like heart issues or conditions, hypertension. It was just something that happened in my pregnancy. And it was traumatic because I was planning a home birth, a
Oh,
natural
wow.
home birth. I had a
Mm.
doula and a
Mm.
midwife, and they just couldn't get my blood pressure regulated. They were fearful that I would seize and we would lose the baby. And my mantra at the time was whatever I have to do to get him here safely earthside is what I'm willing to do.
Yeah.
So I was scheduled for an emergency C-section. Everything just moved very fast.
Yeah.
And I had a C-section. My son was born at 27 weeks and 6 days
Hmm.
and spent 87 days in the NICU.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
Um,
I could just imagine. Like,
it
I'm
was
a
one of
mom. So,
the,
yeah.
yeah, it was the hardest thing I've ever dealt with, like emotionally.
Yeah.
It was hard. It was challenging. It wrecked my world. It
Hmm.
rocked my world. It
Yeah.
changed my life.
Right.
So yeah, it was quite a journey, but faith and prayer and trusting in the medical team.
Yeah.
And now my son is an active, fun loving uh toddler.
Yeah.
He
Glad to
is
hear.
the light of our lives,
Yeah.
and he spreads light everywhere he goes.
Right.
So,
So it sounds like you took, you created beauty from ashes because some people,
yes.
when they go through pain like this or suffering or, you know, just a, a grief period, a dark night of the soul,
Hmm.
you try to figure out like how do you get out of it? What helped you get out of that? I know it's your faith. I understand that, but there had to be other tools or something, or maybe what you learned being a social worker and you had to apply it now, right? Like you're able to give these tools out to other humans constantly, but then when something happens to you personally, you're like, oh wait, I got to pick some stuff up that I keep telling people to do. What was it for you?
I think I had an advantage because I was a social worker.
Mm-hmm.
So, I did my own research.
Okay.
I was knocking down the door of the social worker at the NICU. Um, and just asking for resources. I needed help. I needed support. I had a therapist at the time, which she was great. I loved her as my therapist. I think that when I went through the NICU experience, I think she brought me as far as she could because during
Mhm.
that time, it's like you're in crisis. You
Yeah.
know, the NICU is very unpredictable. You know, they say your child takes 3 steps forward, 10 steps backwards, and
Right.
that's a continuous cycle throughout the journey.
Hmm.
And so for me, I ended up finding a another mom who had went through the NICU. It was like peer support. So we would do check-ins. But that came later in my journey. Like I said, I didn't know what to do. I was looking for resources. They said that there was a therapist there before my son got there. There was nobody there doing groups. I
Hmm.
started in we, you know, in the common areas or in the lunchroom. I started meeting moms and families, and we would meet
Wow.
and talk, just building connection, and being able to encourage each other.
Right.
Also, I had a great support. My family, they sent me encouraging messages. They prayed. My in-laws, they did the same. It was hard. There were days
Yeah.
I didn't even want to get up out of bed, but I had to get up because I needed to be there for my baby.
Yeah.
Um, so
That
it
makes
was,
sense.
and
So what I'm,
also learning the language. I'm sorry, learning the language, the medical
all
terminology. That
right.
was important for me too. I wanted to know everything.
So what I'm hearing, and I see the importance because I've heard this before in my own personal journey with situations that have happened to me, but it's understanding that you have the right to be your own advocate. So it was
Mm-hmm.
advocacy. You advocated for yourself, and you actually utilized the resources that were around you, and you were trying to find out. You researched, and that's a hard time. That's hard right at this time, right? Because research, people don't know what is truth. But I bet you anything, you probably went, because we're trained in that, to look into the
Mm-hmm.
scientific evidence of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, right. And then community, you
Mm-hmm.
ended up building a community. And that's what I want the listener to understand, that they have the right to have advocacy, community, right? And
Definitely.
there are resources, but it's up to the person, even when they don't, like you told me, you did not feel like getting out of bed. And I get it. I understand that completely, because most of us wounded healers that come into this space as therapists, we have our own stories as well.
Yeah.
Right. And so for
Yeah.
you, so, you know, I understand there's a word that was utilized, and I'm like, what is that? I can't believe I've been on this earth for half a century and I don't know this word. Um, and I said it to you, matrescence, defining
Matrescence. Mm-hmm.
yes. I'm like, oh my goodness, now I'm gonna have to go into another rabbit hole and learn something new again. Like, I love it, but hopefully, Jaquesta, you're going to teach me right now what that is. What is that?
So matrescence, it's a term that was coined by an anthropologist back in the 70s, but it's recently gaining traction, I think, in the past few years. It is the process of becoming a mother and the transitions that happen. So those transitions are physiologically, uh, emotionally, mentally, relationally, socially, um, financially.
Okay.
Uh, it's an existential experience when you become a mom.
Oh
So
yeah.
matrescence encompasses because it affects every domain of us as a person,
Yes, it
right?
does.
They liken it to um, going into adolescence and all the changes, the hormonal changes. It's a word similar for moms in
Yeah,
that transition. So
I love that.
that's matrescence.
Matrescence. Oh my goodness. Is this why I still break out in pimples? All right, sorry. Okay. No, but seriously, like, yeah, it is. I mean, and it's important for someone that is a mom to understand that then, because sometimes I know I'm, well, of course now we've established that I'm probably old enough to be your mother, but but it's still like you go through changes, and sometimes what happens when we don't understand what's happening inside of us, we become fearful, and we get scared of these things that are happening and we feel like we're alone, and understanding that you're not alone, and many women for centuries have gone through matrescence. I just did not know there
Mhm.
was a word about, I mean, wow, love it. So tell me, um what, what are some of the most, you know, common struggles mothers face? What do you think, physically, emotionally, and spiritually? Let's just go through each one during these significant life transitions.
I would say obviously the changes in your body, your physical body. Um, if you like for me, I planned on having a natural birth and then now having a C-section scar. And even if you had a C-section planned, it can still take some time to just adjust to having this scar.
Mhm.
There's the hormonal changes that you're experiencing after the birth of the child.
Oh, yeah.
So, the extremes. I mean, 80% of women experience baby blues. So,
Mm.
like, and that's due to the hormones, the drop in hormones that we experience. There's also studies that are finding changes in the brain, structural and functional changes, like changes in the gray matter. And
Mm.
what they're saying or what they're suggesting is that those changes are to accommodate um, focusing on like responding to your baby's cues or,
Yeah.
caregiving and nurturing your child. And that's where we hear about mom brain because everything is in the brain is being organized around that so that we
Mm.
can make sure this baby survives, right?
Yeah.
And there's less concentration on the organizing part of the brain, memory. That's when you hear about mom brain,
Yeah.
if
Mommy
you've
brain.
heard that term.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mommy.
So God, in His wisdom, created moms
Yeah.
and even the changes in our brain to make sure that we are able to nurture and care for our babies. That's
Yeah.
amazing to me.
Right. I mean, that's like, honestly, I know this sounds weird, but growing up, I watched a lot of television, and I didn't grow up in a very healthy way. So I knew like one day if I became a mom, I needed to learn. So I would watch a lot of like Discovery Channel, like animal, because
Mm-hmm.
I remember in science being told, and like in third grade or whatever, like, you're a mammal. And I'm like, oh, okay. So let me learn what mammals do. And seriously, but it kind of makes sense because you do see a transition of like first you take care of your child and then you kind of have to push him to fly or to
Mm-hmm.
whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is. And I did not chew up food and put it in my child's mouth, though. Okay, people.
And I won't do that either. I
Yeah.
told my husband we're not doing that.
Yeah. So, but I know that there's a lot of women that struggle because you just talked about the blues, postpartum depression. Okay. And that is real. That's a real thing. I remember a long time ago, and probably in the 80s, was a movie, an after school special or something where the mother did not want any attachment to that child at all after
Mm-hmm.
they gave birth. Like, what do you like? How do you approach that as a therapist, like with these mothers?
Approach letting them know that they have it, or
Yeah, well, like yeah, like someone's coming to you and they have all this guilt and shame for not, this is supposed to be the most magical time of their life, right? At time,
I'm
this is what
sorry.
society talks about at times, like, oh, motherhood, it's the most beautiful thing in the world. And all of a sudden you have a baby and you don't feel that at all. What would you say?
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to a mom that's experiencing?
Well, the first thing we want to do is make sure that we would assess. So I would give them the Edinburgh postpartum depression scale assessment. It's a 10 question. It's very easy. And then just assess their symptoms. And then maybe I would respond to them just to see how they're feeling. I mean, just checking in with them and seeing how they're feeling. And based on like if they're saying that I'm tired a lot or I'm overwhelmed or it's harder than I expected it to be. Are they eating? Are they sleeping? And based on those questions, I'd probably say to them, it sounds like you might be going through postpartum depression.
Mm.
Sometimes postpartum depression appears with anxiety, And sometimes
Mm,
anxiety is the presenting symptoms. So if they're overthinking or they're saying that they can't sleep at night, insomnia, just worried about things, something happening to the baby, intrusive thoughts, then we'd want to make sure that we get them help and come up with a plan for them.
okay. Yeah. I mean, it is challenging. It is motherhood's challenging. Everybody's on a different, and it also depends on how much support because
Mm-hmm.
I was raised by a single mom. I mean, I had support there a little bit by my dad's family, some, but it was hard. It was a hard
Yeah,
thing. So what what practical tools do you have like that if a listener is and they can't just afford to go to therapy right away, like where do you suggest them to start? Is there like a website or some kind of resource, a book? What would you give a person that is looking for some resources?
for resources.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say this first. I want to make sure that I tell them that what they're experiencing is normal, that
Mm-hmm.
many moms go through this, and that all symptoms are treatable. I want to make sure I say that
Yeah.
just to normalize the experience. But some resources are Postpartum Support International was one resource that I myself reached out to. They have a hotline that's 24 hours, 365. That phone number, I have it around here somewhere.
That's okay.
Um,
I'll put it in the show notes. Don't worry.
okay.
Like, yeah.
They have resources. They have groups every week, support groups every week. So
Wow.
they also have peer mentors. Very great resource. Postpartum Support International. They helped me. They're actually the
Okay.
ones that did my training.
Oh, wow.
Mhm. um, Also, because it also depends on what their journey was. If a person experienced pregnancy loss, or do have a book that I did with one that I went through with one of my clients.
Mm-hmm.
She actually found it. It's called "Grieving the Child I Never Knew."
Oh my
It's
goodness. Yeah.
by Kathy Winenberg.
Okay.
It's a devotional journal,
Okay.
and we use that to process just some of her feelings. It was a great resource and tool if you're a therapist. Um, Other resources, you can reach out to me.
Yeah.
I am accepting moms, and you can find me on Psychology Today, Jaquesta Michelle,
Mhm.
and I'm a great resource.
Yeah, for sure. No, and all this information will be in the show notes so they can get your information. So I just want to now go into your story with NICU because honestly, my story as a mom will be very different because I gave a natural birth, right, to the
Mm-hmm.
person that went through something like you, right, where you had
Mm-hmm.
to go. I mean, I've heard stories about, 80, you said 87 days.
87 days. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or there's like been stories where it's a lot longer, or maybe just the initial of like being there for a week, or just that. Like, can you just what signs should a mother or her loved one watch out for to know if she needs professional support?
If she needs professional support, I think you mentioned it. One of them is a mom that's detached from the baby or doesn't want anything to do with the baby.
Okay.
If you see like rage or extreme irritability, sadness, crying a lot, and if she's isolating, I mean, not coming out of the house, and if they're saying things like, oh, maybe the baby would be better if I wasn't here. That is someone we
Mm,
definitely want to get some support to. Um, yeah, like just avoiding anyone that's avoiding maybe even the hospital.
okay.
Because when you experience a NICU, you have to go to the hospital. So avoiding the hospital, that might be signs that they're having acute stress, which could lead to PTSD. So
Okay.
post traumatic stress disorder. So those are some of the things. So some of the symptoms that you'd see, and that you'd want to get them support.
Okay. In the hospital that you were at, you don't need to tell me which one it was, but there was social workers and other kinds inside there, like in the NICU department where you can reach out, correct? Like,
Oh yes, definitely. So yeah,
okay.
they should have a social worker. Some of them also have social workers who engage you in groups. They didn't at the hospital that I was at, but I've heard that they
Okay.
may have like groups or support for
Okay.
parents.
All right. I want to switch now to someone that might be listening that isn't the mother, but is part of a family that this is going through.
Okay.
Okay. Like what do you think, or what would you say to say the family members or the friends or the partners about how they can best support a mother going through something like this?
Um, I think it's important to ask for permission. And when I say that, so there's a lot of excitement around a baby being born. And sometimes moms get overlooked. And
Mm,
sometimes moms are dealing because it affects your self-concept. So, and if you've had like core beliefs already about yourself, like maybe
mm,
feelings of failure or I'm not enough. Motherhood is hard or challenging, especially for new moms. This is your
mhm,
first time. There's no manual. Nobody teaches us how to nurture and care for a baby. And like there's no manual for it. So
mm,
asking for permission is important because we want to make sure that we do what mom is okay with us doing. You know, some people want to jump in and like, oh, I'll take care of the baby. You go do this. And
mm,
well, maybe that's not what mom needs. Maybe mom needs you. Okay, I want to take a shower. It's okay if you hold the baby while I take a shower. Okay, do you want to do a feeding? Can you feed the baby for me? So kind of asking for permission, like what is okay. I think some practical things that you can do is maybe cooking meals. Um, Everything gets organized around the baby when the baby's
yeah.
born.
Yeah.
So, like, even your basic, sometimes moms and parents together, we forget our basic needs. So, eating is important. So,
Yes.
maybe cooking meals, also doing laundry or helping out as far as like cleaning around the house,
Mhm.
sending a mom care package
Mm.
for self care.
Let's talk about that a little. Like what
Yeah,
would you put in it? Like to
in a
me,
self
if
care
I'm
package.
yeah, like what would you think would be a cool self-care package? I think we should think about that together because in case someone's
Yeah,
listening, listen, if there's like a logical guy who's just like, give me just what to do. I don't I don't have emotions. I,
right.
I need to know
Yeah,
what to do. Like, here's
I've
the
seen
list of
them.
things.
I've seen some with just like a notepad
Hmm.
or things for your morning routine for your face.
Hmm.
Women like to receive those things. So
Yeah, definitely.
body wash
Yeah.
or face wash,
Hmm.
um, candles, a journal maybe,
Yeah.
nice slippers or socks.
If you could afford it, a gift to a spa.
Oh yeah, that would be nice. I haven't heard that one,
And
but
then
that's a
offer
great
the
one.
babysitting. Well, no, ask permission. Ask
Ask for
permission.
permission. Yeah,
May I
yeah,
please take the child? Or
yes,
yeah.
yeah.
Um, I would think things like that, like nurturing, loving. I'm sure right now you could
A
just probably,
massage.
yeah,
Yeah.
massage, put in well, first you need to know the human because I'm thinking some of the women I know that are moms that are like, don't touch me. I don't want no massage.
Right, right,
To
right.
me, I'm all about the massage. I'm like,
Yeah.
please touch me. Oh,
Their
so
favorite snacks,
yeah,
maybe. Yeah.
exactly. Things that
Mm-hmm.
will cheer them up, things that you
Mm-hmm.
have to get to know the mom and don't forget the mom because it's true. Like I think in different cultures, it's more, because it's a collective thing and it's all of a sudden it's the child. And you're right, the mom feels like a cow breast if they're breastfeeding or just like this whole like, oh my goodness, this is all I am,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And
And
we
even checking in. Like
right.
sometimes we're calling, oh, how's my grandbaby? Or how's my niece, my nephew?
Yeah.
Okay, but how's mom doing? Like I'm still
Yes,
here, So
exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm still wow. So many moms feel isolated and overwhelmed. They
Mm-hmm.
do. I know I did. I did have a good support system. I'm very grateful for that. Plus I married someone who had three older children. So basically my son had an 11 your difference with the older
Oh.
sister. And it was like perfect because she became like the second mom
Uh-huh.
in a way, and their relationship's beautiful now.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, yeah. And
I was gonna
so
ask you about that.
yeah, I mean, so I'm a mom of four, but it was the blended family situation. Like married a man with three children already, and then him and I had ours together. But all four of them are mine, especially if you're listening, you're mine, and all those grandkids are mine too.
Oh.
But that being said, I still kind of felt isolated and a little bit of, overwhelm, of course. And I know it was hormonal. And I also was educated. I have an early childhood education. I was a preschool teacher. So, I read every book. I went to Percy White Library of Hillsborough and got me a stack of books and Discovery
You just
Channel
wanted to
and the
learn,
books.
no?
But what would you want to say to someone that feels stuck or unsure how to move forward?
I would say that what you're experiencing is something that many moms experience and that you're not alone. Um, and I know right now it's difficult, it's challenging, but God gave you this baby because He knew you had what was needed to nurture and care for this baby. Um, and if you have someone in your life that is, a safe person that you can speak to, just sharing a little bit about how you're feeling can bring some relief. Having
Mm,
that one go-to person or friend. I know for me, that helps me. I know it helps a lot of the moms that I work with. Um, and also reaching out to resources, um,
yeah.
joining a support group for moms.
Mhm.
You can be well and you will thrive. Right
Yeah.
now it's hard, but you can and you will.
Yeah. I mean, we have to remember that our feelings are temporary,
Mm-hmm.
even though they feel so real and permanent,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're going through the valley, you
Mm-hmm.
feel like these are things that are will forever be like this, and it's
Right.
not. I mean, this is why it's really important to learn and educate yourself, because when you start learning and understanding that you're not stuck, this is why I love all
Yeah.
the brain research you were just talking about earlier, is like you're not stuck. You have
Mm-hmm.
the capability to create new neuron, you know
Yeah.
rewiring of the brain.
Right.
It does
Mm-hmm.
take work though. It does, it's like it's no magic bullet. There's
Mm-hmm.
no, you are your own thumbprint, and God
Mm-hmm.
made you so cool. Like honestly, it's just understanding that sometimes we have narratives or stories that have been told to us, and to break out of those. And to me, it's important to have faith. I think, Jaquesta, like, I know my faith has got me this far, and I'm
Yeah.
sounds like it has gotten you this far as well. And I just, as we wrap up, I would love to know, like, is there anything else, maybe in the Bible or in your own faith walk, that you would like to share before we end this episode?
Um, that's a good question. I think for me, one of my life verse is something that carries me,
Mm,
and I think of it and I hold on to it. And it says, "Now unto him who's able to do exceedingly abundantly above all we ask, think, or imagine, according to the power that works within us." So
mm,
it's like we're partnering with God.
yes.
And so I believe, like, even as a mom, I'm partnering with God. One thing one of my friends told me is she said that when you become a mom, it's going to keep you at the feet of Jesus. And
For
they do.
real.
They keep you at the feet of
Yes.
Jesus. So just holding on to that truth and holding on to the fact that God will perfect everything that concerns us.
Mhm.
It may not be the way that we expected it, and
Right.
that's some of that feeling stuck is the loss, grieving the loss of what you expected or what you
Wow.
thought your pregnancy or your birth experience was going to be, or what you thought motherhood was going to be. And a
Mm,
lot of moms experience that. But remember, you're going through this whole like identity shift. Okay.
yes.
You're questioning or you're you're starting to relook at like, your purpose, your life's purpose and your values and the things, your legacy. What do you want to instill in this child? So give yourself grace. Okay. You've never been this way before if you're a new mom. And if you are a second or third time mom, every experience is different. So give yourself grace and the space to grow in it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love that. We're going to end it right there.
Okay.
How can people find you?
Okay, sure. I'm on Psychology Today, Jaquesta Michelle. I also have an Instagram that I'm not on as much, but it's she_empowers with a Z.
Okay.
She_empowers. But Psychology Today, you can find me.
All right. And all that will be in the show notes, people. So thank you for listening. And remember to always trust in the Lord, guard your heart, and renew your mind. Bye. And now for the disclaimer to make sure you understand that you are responsible for you. The content provided on the Holistic Counselor podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified mental health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical or mental condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. The views expressed on this podcast are my personal opinions and do not represent the views of any professional organizations with which I am affiliated. Call your doctor, 911, or 988 immediately if you have a medical emergency. The Holistic Counselor podcast does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on the podcast. Reliance on any information provided by the Holistic Counselor podcast, guests appearing on the podcast at the invitation of the Holistic Counselor podcast, or other listeners to the podcast is solely at your own risk. Confidentiality notice. If you engage with the Holistic Counselor podcast by commenting or posting and are a client, please be aware that you may be revealing information that could compromise your confidentiality. Please remember that disclosing your identity or personal details can be linked to your clinical material. As a therapist, I am bound by confidentiality and will not respond to any disclosures of this type on this podcast. I am committed to upholding the ethics and confidentiality of the therapeutic relationship, which extends to all forms of communication in accordance with the laws and professional guidelines that govern mental health professionals. I want you to know that your privacy is of utmost importance, and you are responsible for protecting it when interacting on this platform or any other public forum. Thank you.